Hello and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing for Thursday, September 29th. It's the young team here once again because Tony's off. So joining me again today is TCW news writer Aidan Macdonald. How's things, Aidan?
I'm good, Sean. How are you?
Nice one, yeah. Fine and dandy here, despite what would characterise as slight sleep deprivation as we try to get the wee one to sleep in our own room. But apart from that, fine. Before we get started, you all know what I'm going to say. We are more than just a podcast. We have a full, all singing, all dancing website that carries so much more than what's on the YouTube channel here or the podcast app, whatever way you choose to listen. And just now you can get full access to that website and everything that's on there just for just £1 for 2 months. So why not give us a wee try, I say. Now, Aidan, our proper Motherwell previews tomorrow, although we might touch on it in some way here too. But today I'm thinking we might take a wee something of a magical mystery tour through various Celtic related topics because there's no standout one I wouldn't say. So you up for that?
Sounds good.
Good stuff. First up, I'm going to hit you with, so you're probably rolling your eyes, but Matt O'Reilly Newcastle link, and I've got in brackets in my notes again. So more reports that Matt O'Reilly has been watched by English Premier League side Newcastle during the Denmark under-21s matches. So I suppose, first of all, thoughts on that, Aidan, in general? Are you surprised?
Nah, I'm not surprised he's been looked at. We know he's a quality player. In fact, he's now playing in the Champions League as well. Could be set to break into the Denmark national team. It's not really a surprise to me that he's got suitors in the Premier League and elsewhere. But I don't think I could see him going immediately in January or anything like that. But
Well, Beach Boys is almost resigned to losing them in January, but it sounds like Aidan looks like we'll be losing O'Reilly come January. By then he will have become a league winner, played in the Champions League and been to the World Cup. Good forward planning would be getting Abelgard, who's in technically, and Haksabanovic, who's obviously in. I can see the logic. I'm kind of like you. I think he will be here the whole season. I'm certainly not wishing him out the door anyway. And I think Chilpill's probably get the right of it because everything O'Reilly's said so far suggests he's got his head screwed on. He's not going to jump at the first chance just because it's England, for instance.
yeah, and the fact is he's also just came from, also it was a lower level playing in England, so I can't imagine he's going to want to leave Celtic so soon. I think, obviously, the last couple of days and the last couple of weeks, I've spoken a lot about the Champions League and everything that offers. I think if Celtic were to be in the Champions League, which is a big ask, obviously, after Christmas for the last 16, I couldn't see somebody like Matt O'Reilly then leaving and going to a Newcastle straight away. As much as I know he'll be able to probably quadruple his wages, I just can't see that happening because you would still have the option of Champions League football. But yeah, based off of what the commenter saying there, Matt O'Reilly, anytime he has been getting interviewed, he just brushed away those sorts of questions about his future. So the summer could be a different conversation, but I don't personally think I could see him going in January.
Nah, the thing with Matt O'Reilly is, and you're right, if it was, for instance, if it was Newcastle, he probably would be quadrupling his wages. But, and I've kind of pointed this out before when I've done the scouting report on him in January and stuff, he's not that much financially motivated, because if he was, he would have signed the 3-year deal at Fulham, who are a yo-yo club up and down the Premier League. All right, he would have been in the under-23s for the majority of the time. He couldn't get guarantees of getting the chance in the first team, but he'd have been on really good money, certainly more than he would have been on at MK Dons. So he took that chance, he gambled on himself, he bet on himself, if you want to put it that way. Ended up COVID hit and stuff, trained in a park with his dad, all that kind of stuff. Went to MK Dons, was clearly too good for that level, and Celtic have snapped him up. Now, it's not as if he's on pennies at Celtic. So as long as he's still of that mindset where what will come, and if he sees a chance that fits him rather than just financially rewards him, then fair enough. Newcastle might end up fitting both bills. It depends how they go on this season. But I mean, in general, I think his head is screwed on. I think he just totally comes across like that kind of character. My stance on this has been pretty consistent when it comes to Matt O'Reilly, which is just we need to get used to it. These links. Do you know what I mean? He's 21. He's already ticking so many boxes. He's only going to be ticking more of them. He's only going to become more sought after the more that he plays for Celtic. And think about it, an English club with aspirations for Europe, no, he's going to qualify as a homegrown player as well, which just adds to his appeal. So, I mean, I've said it before, it will no shock to regular viewers, but I rate him so highly that I've said on here before, if he continues progressing as he has been, I even tweeted it out. I'd expect him to break Kieran Tierney's Scottish transfer record, Aidan.
Yeah, he's an exceptional player. He's got everything going for him. And as we've seen with under-21s, he's doing it at international level as well as club level. So he definitely potentially could break Kieran Tierney's transfer record. I think he's probably one of the many players at the club right now that could probably be put into that bracket. But in terms of the links and having to get used to it, you're completely right. It's like with Ange, it's like with Jota. Anytime any of these players are doing well, or the manager, particularly in Europe, that you're just going to get linked constantly. So it's just try to kind of block that out and hope that they don't read too much into it right now.
I tend to agree with Alan Robertson's point here. O'Reilly knows that he's better at Celtic for another year at least. A couple of comments saying it should be another 2 or 3, which would be even better, I would say. But Alan Robertson pointing out, worst case scenario, it does happen and Celtic get a load of cash for it. So I tend to think on it the way Alan's thinking on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to get, if he is going to go soon, then yeah, you will get a lot of funds that you can use to replace him, I suppose. So it's a positive.
I mean, Beach Boys does make a fair point, Aidan. I'm sure you'd agree, playing at Newcastle for 52,000 every week and then away to City, Chelsea, Liverpool, blah, blah, blah. It's slightly more appealing than Livingston, Ross County and Kilmarnock away. Of course it is, but it's not the be-all and end-all either. And as I've said, he's already proven that he's eyes on the ball in terms of his own career development. If he thinks he's going to get into Newcastle and not get a game, he's not going to go, I think, because he's already proven when he was at Fulham that the most important thing to him is actually getting a game rather than going down and not being a first pick or not having a chance of being a first pick. So, no, I think he comes across like that, Aidan, and I would be quite confident in saying he's the kind of guy that wouldn't just go.
No, I mean, based off his kind of track record that you were mentioning with the Fulham and then going to MK Dons, it's probably safe to assume it wasn't that long ago. I mean, that was less than a year ago we signed him, so his mindset must still be quite similar to that. It's obviously like the commenter saying there, we can't dispute the glamour of the Premier League and that, and we wouldn't try and do that. But once again, I think Champions League, it's in Newcastle at the moment, I don't think they're in the Champions League places for down south, so I think having that till, even if it was after Christmas, I think that would keep him and a lot of players there. So, yeah, I think if does have his head screwed on, like you're saying, and I don't think I can see him leaving in the near future anyway.
And as David Ferguson points out in response to that comment, Celtic Park's not exactly short of a few people going to watch him. Right, next one on, we're kind of whistle stop tour. This is kind of like a pub question, a wee pub hypothetical, Aidan. Andy Robertson, former youth player, well-known Celtic fan, world-class left-back, said in an interview with BT that he always thinks about what could have been, what could be, what might have been with the hoops and maybe one day and all that. You having him?
I mean, if you were getting the Andy Robertson right now, then aye. But, I think you can need to be a bit wary sometimes. Obviously, he's mentioned at the end of his career and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was coming in as like a 35, 36-year-old. I mean, I immediately think about Freddie Lundberg when he came for that short spell and it was a bit kind of uneventful. I wouldn't say no completely because I don't know what kind of player he's going to be like when he's that age. But I'll go yeah. I'll just say yeah, why not?
For me, he's a superb player, right? I do wonder, on a strictly a tactical level, I do wonder how he got on with the inverted stuff because he's very much an overlapping and crossing sort of wing back at Liverpool. But touching on your point, you're making the assumption it would be when he's 34, 35. He says himself, if he stays in form and Liverpool want to keep him, he'll be staying there until he's that age. And then he said he'd no intention of a Celtic move where he can barely move when he gets here. And his family would give him pelters, which I think is fair enough. It's a fair enough assumption to make, or fair enough observation to make. Just a pub hypothetical, really, isn't it?
It is, but I mean, I didn't realise he'd actually made that comment about worried about getting slagged off his family. So, yeah,
what he really says was, I'm worried Greg Taylor keeps going on the route that he's going and he'll not get a game.
I'll take his place in the Scotland team. But yeah, I think if that's kind of his thoughts, then it's probably unlikely he would be that age. But if it was a peak Andy Robertson, I know you were talking about the inverted thing, but if it's him at his peak, then you wouldn't be turning that down, I don't think.
Nah, that's fair enough. Right, back from pub hypotheticals. the tagline at the top of this video, Aidan, we'll touch on that one. Oscar Gloukh, transfer links just not going away. Like, he's an 18-year-old Israeli midfielder, plays for Maccabi Tel Aviv alongside Nir Biton. He's been linked for the past couple of weeks. It kind of went quiet the last maybe 7 days or so. It's resurfaced again in the past 24 hours due to reports from Israel that he's rejected a new contract. Now, those reports, from what I see, don't necessarily state he's outright said no to a new deal. More that it's understood that January is a likely departure point because he's got 2 years left on his current deal, and he reportedly stayed in the summer because of a face-to-face meeting with the club owner, Canadian billionaire Mitchell Goulter. So, I mean, anyway, that's the kind of the background to it. But anyway, he is an attack-minded midfielder, Aidan, likes to play just left of centre, which we know tends to be the Real Hatate David Turnbull rotation game just now. And on top of that, there's been other clubs being linked with them and credited with an interest, such as Zenit St. Petersburg earlier in the summer. Ajax, Marseille, at one point Rangers were linked with him, but I don't know if that was just over here. But Aidan, for me, 2 questions come from this one. First one is, do you see midfield, an attack-minded midfielder, as somewhere that you would like Celtic to strengthen?
It's a difficult one because obviously I immediately think about, Hatate, O'Reilly both doing really well, and then I know he's maybe got a wee knock, but you've got Turnbull, but then we didn't necessarily replace Tom Rogic like for like. Obviously we've brought in Abdelgard. He can play a bit further back, and that allows McGregor to go forward. So you could say you've got 4 players who can kind of cover that number 8 position. But I think it'd be good to get another one in, to be honest. So you've actually got like 4 out and out number 8s that are kind of always going to be an option to play there.
Fair enough. I mean, the thing is, when you look at it, I suppose it depends how much you rate David Turnbull. Patrick McLaughlin here asking I was quite shocked by it. Is Turnbull for the off in January? I still think he's due a new contract in maybe November, December. I think you'll maybe get that announced when they break for the World Cup. I base that just on the fact that he's the one kind of regularly used first 11 member that expires. I think 2024 he expires. So I think that will be shown up. Even if Patrick's right and maybe they do have designs on maybe letting him go at some point. I don't think they do. I think Postecoglou likes him. I think he'll still get a new deal. Would you think, Aidan?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he didn't get a new deal, because if he doesn't, then he's only got a year left come the summer, and then he could leave for not that much or leave for nothing. So I think he'll be getting a new deal. Whether or not it's similar to the Stuart Armstrong one that time when he only signed like a couple of years, or it's actually a 3 or 4 year deal that extends him for several years at the club. I'd be very surprised if we aren't trying to negotiate with him right now to sign a contract.
Back to Oscar Gloukh, and Chilpul says, heard a lot of good stuff about this lad. Hopefully with Abada here, it's a carrot to attract him. And Nir Biton, talking to him over in Tel Aviv, hopefully. The thing I would say off the back of that, Aidan, this is the second question that came to my head, was if you do think that is a position that you could see them strengthening, and maybe he is a guy that would genuinely come in and strengthen it, how do you evaluate an appropriate level of funds to do that? Because by all accounts, this boy sounds like he'll have a couple of suitors if he's ready to go, and he's only 18. Like, how do you evaluate what you spend? If it's a January move, you don't necessarily want to be spending a lot in January, but it sounds like it might take a decent offer, if not, probably not to the realms of the 8 to 10 million that I think was being reported, because he will have even less than the 2 years left on his deal. At that point, he'll maybe have made it clear he wants to go, that kind of stuff. I think Zenit St. Petersburg said 2.5 million or something in the summer, and that was just said no. So even if it's a medium in between that, is that an appropriate level of funds for January for Celtic?
I mean, I definitely, obviously you're saying it'll probably not be the 8 to 10 million given his contractual status, which is a good thing because they obviously wouldn't be paying that. The only way we'd probably pay that sort of fee would be if an O'Reilly or Hatate left. I think if it was about 3 million, maybe 3.5 million, maybe up to 5, I don't know. I could maybe see you spending it. I understand that's maybe not a position that a lot of people are probably identifying as we need to get a player in there badly. So if somebody's a bit more worried about up front or defence, for example, maybe the sort of funds that would get allocated on this player would go there. But I could see us potentially spending 4 or 5 million on a player in January. I mean, the money you've just got from the Champions League, plus if you pick up a few wins in the Champions League as well, it's something like is it 2 million or something for a victory or something like that.
That's
so
a good point, aye.
say you did win a few games, don't want to tempt fate, but if you did, then that would be increased income. So I don't think there's any reason you couldn't spend like kind of like 3 to maybe 5, but definitely the 8 to 10, that'll not be happening unless what a main player leaves.
Mm-hmm. I mean, with a guy at that age, there's always going to be a sell-on fee. There's always going to be that kind of stuff. He might see Celtic as a gateway to the Premier League, to other leagues in Europe, which isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as his head's in the game while he's here. That kind of thing. Sean Curran makes a great point though. He thinks it's inevitable. Players will go next year. I presume he's next summer. So a guy like Oscar Gloukh might actually make sense in January to preempt it. Like for instance, it wasn't so much players were going to be leaving, although there was an exodus in the summer. But remember, the business that Celtic done in January was absolutely key to winning that league. And it also meant that this summer there wasn't. I know Celtic did eventually sign 7 or 8 players, depending if you count Maida as a new signing and different things. But the backbone of the team was already there, and a lot of that was put in place by preemptively signing people in January. So Sean Curran makes a good point. If you do sign him in January, maybe that money would be worth it, because it would mean you're not having to wait until summer if someone like O'Reilly or someone like Hatate or whoever else leaves, or even Turnbull, as Patrick McLaughlin said.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we'll ever criticise the club for, thinking ahead if this is what their kind of thoughts are when it comes to bringing a guy like this in, because obviously, in the past, fans have probably been quite critical of the fact that, for example, they waited until Christopher Ayer was out the door before Starfelt was officially announced, etc. So getting guys in, if you're kind of looking, 6 months down the line that somebody else might be leaving, there's no issue with that. But to be honest, even though I'm talking about spending money, a lot of it will be probably based on the fee. I mean, you've seen last January, also, we needed players a lot more then. Combined for the 3 Japanese players, it wasn't that much. And then O'Reilly, it was under 2 million, wasn't it? As far as I can remember. So it's, if this is a strategy, like Sean's saying there in the comments, then that's really, really positive. But whether it is or not, I don't actually know.
In terms of Oscar Gloukh, in any case, whether it comes to fruition, whether it doesn't, we'll have an in-depth scouting report on him up very soon, and it's from our man Stuart Ross, so it's going to be a cracker. So keep your eye out for that going live on the website. Either be later today, maybe tomorrow morning, and that will give you all you need to know about Oscar Gloukh, the kind of player he is, where he might fit in, whether he does fit in with the system, all that kind of stuff. Stuart knows his stuff, does it well. If I remember tomorrow, I'll throw the link up on here in case any of you miss it on the website, but definitely be worth a read. Now, this one, Aidan, again, it might be in the realms of a wee bit of a pub debate, but I love those. Jason Denayer, would you have tried to have brought him back to Celtic?
I definitely would have tried, yeah. I mean, obviously it was going to be hard with him having been at Lyon, being the captain of Lyon. If he was wanting to play in Europe, he would have probably had a lot of suitors that could offer a lot more money than Celtic, but I would have liked to think we asked the question. Is it probably based off anything in the fact that he was here for a year on loan before? Mm-hmm. If Jason Denayer had left and had no connection to Celtic, would we have been... so if Jason Denayer had left Leon and had no connection, would we have thought...
Do you say Kieran Denayer?
Sorry, Kieran, not... Jason Denayer.
Kieran and Tierney stick in your head there, I think.
I know, it's stuck in my head, man, it always is. But I like to think that we would have asked the question, because he's a brilliant player who's done it at a really high standard in League One. Maybe not, I know people maybe get their opinions about that league, but if you can go and do it well there, he would have no issues playing in Scotland. But I've always said the league he's went to, it does look kind of financially motivated, doesn't it? So
I think that's a fair enough observation. I mean, he's only just turned 27 in the summer there. Still a Belgium international, technically, even though he was injured. Until recently, he was Lyon captain. It's United Arab Emirates side Shabab Al-Akhli he's gone to. So I do think that's a fair observation, Aidan. He was a standout when he was here at Celtic before it, and I do agree with you, if he wasn't here on loan before, he probably wouldn't have even considered it. Won PFA Scotland Young Player of the Year, I think, that year, 2014, 2015. But fundamentally, he'll be getting a big wage over there, as you say, but given English Premier League teams were sniffing about, there's every chance Celtic wouldn't have been willing to pay the salary he'd have taken anyway, even if he wanted to. Do you know what I mean? On player profile, for me, I'd have loved to have seen him play under Ange Postecoglou if he wanted him. Obviously, that would be the key if he wanted him. Worth pointing out, he spent a lot of time injured last season anyway, but I don't know. I think David Bradley says no. Jamie Young says too expensive. I think even not just the fact that he was a free agent, but actually because he was a free agent, for a lot of clubs that means they'll spend more on the wages because there's no fee. And I think that would have counted against Celtic ultimately.
Yeah, it probably would have been out of our wage bracket, unfortunately. I noticed that I think it was only 1 year deal he signed for that club in the United Arab Emirates, so obviously there could be a chance after it that he's coming back, but once again I think it would be priced out. But no, he was a brilliant player, and like you say, it would have been great to see him under Ange. He does look like somebody that would kind of fit the profile based off the sort of centre-halves Ange went for in the past.
Right, last one, our whistle stop tour, magical mystery tour, whatever way you want to put it is. You fired up a wee news article on this yesterday, and so it's Ange Postecoglou pinpointed one match in particular that sealed, or he said sealed, the Aaron Mooy transfer, didn't he? I found it interesting. You fired up a news article. Could you remind us what he said, or remind us roughly what it was?
Yeah, so when Ange was getting interviewed recently when he was over promoting the Sydney Super Cup, he was asked about Aaron Mooy, as you would expect, and he pinpointed a specific game that he played for Australia in the World Cup playoffs. Now, I believe it was a game that happened in either May or June, and they played Peru.
Yeah.
At the time, Mooy, I don't know if he hadn't played any football since January, but it was very, very limited. Obviously, the situation that was going on with the Chinese Super League club that it was at, there was some sort of dispute there between him and the club before he left. So Ange said that performance, I think Mooy played pretty much the whole game, about 95 odd minutes, and he said he was absolutely brilliant. And when he watched that game, pretty much that's when they knew he was going to try and sign him for Celtic. So it's clear to see he's been an admirer of Aaron Mooy from afar for a while.
I mean, it was 1st of February, I think, end of January, 1st of February, and then he played in the two qualifiers or two games before that, a couple of friendlies maybe. And then he played in that Peru game. That Peru game went to penalty, so he played like 126 minutes or something like that. It was a slog. But what was interesting to me about that one, Aidan, or what stuck out to me, and it's not perhaps what it might be a disingenuous question of also he signed him off one game, that kind of thing. It's not that, because that's obviously not the case, because he'd played under him with the Australian national team anyway. He knew him, might not have seen him in a few years, but he knew him. It's not just off the back of one game. But what stuck out to me was that Peru game was in June the 13th, Aidan. Mooy signed for Celtic July the 19th, which was over a month later, obviously. Mooy, at the time of that announcement, I remember him saying he'd only been contacted 5 or 6 days prior to signing. So I just found it interesting that although Postecoglou said that Peru game kind of sealed it, it was still a month before the club contacted Mooy about it. I just found that interesting.
Yeah, and it obviously just shows you that Ange is always thinking and spotting players maybe just in his own personal time before he's actually even maybe speaking to the scouts to try and identify people. So yeah, it obviously shows you, as we've probably already realised, because he has been featuring quite a lot, even if it's coming off the bench, that he's a big admirer of Aaron Mooy, and it's also somebody he thinks can fit into his system.
I just wonder if it was, if maybe thought when he saw him, if something else doesn't come up in the next couple of weeks, then I'll get Aaron Mooy in, that kind of thing. I wonder if it was more that, given what the two of them have said separately, that Ange says that sealed it, but Aaron Mooy himself says he wasn't contacted until a month later, that kind of thing. There's no problem with it. I just find it interesting if that was maybe the case. And then the Oliver Abelgard thing came up maybe obviously very late in the window.
Yeah, it probably maybe just shows us that it's not always 6 months worth of scouting before Celtic go and sign a player. Moves maybe do just happen quite fast. And it could be, like you've said, that they were looking at other options at the time that then sort of fell through. Sousa and that, etc. Obviously, that went to Espanyol. I don't know if the dates fully line up there. I don't know if he was kind of out of the running by the time.
I think pretty much.
But yeah, it obviously just shows you the different transfer strategies at the club.
Patrick kind of reinforcing what I was saying there. Ange's maybe had another wee look around before making contact, which again, there's no problem with that. It came into my head when he says the Peru game, I thought I was over a month before he signed, and then I remembered Mooy had said, well, it was only 5 or 6 days before I signed that they'd made contact, that kind of thing. So I suppose there could have been contact with the agent and stuff, but I just found it interesting. Right, any other business, Aidan? Any other questions you've seen in the comments or anything like that, or quite happy with our Magical Mystery Tour taking a stop there?
No, I'm quite happy with the Magical Mystery Tour. I think it's been good. I've enjoyed it.
Right, well, we shall call it there for today, I think, then, shall we? I think so. I think thank you for your contribution, and thanks as always to everybody else who watched, commented, everything else. Much appreciated. Remember, as I said at the start, it's £1 for 2 months of full access to the website. I'll put the link in the comments because I forgot at the start. And we will catch you all tomorrow, hopefully, for a proper preview of Celtic returning to action against Motherwell. Thanks very much.
Cheers.